Is Erin Youngstrom. I am the Fund Development and Outreach Coordinator for Catholic Community Service. I've been with Catholic Community Service for a little bit over a year now. And tonight we are going to be talking about everything that Catholic Community Service does, what our impact is on the community, but also to kick off Year of Compassion specifically, which is really exciting. But before I do that, I would like to recognize our board members. We have our president, John Greeley, who is from Juneau, Vice President Maria Laskowski from Juneau as well, Secretary Kathy Price of Juneau, Treasurer Pat Davidson of Juneau, Deacon Vince Hansen, who's located up in Haines, Jim Carroll of Juneau, Lori Ortiz of Ketchikan, Deacon Mike Monagle of Juneau, Mary Ellen Skinna, who I like to think of as Sweetheart in the South, and she is in Kloak. And finally, we also have Father Pat Travers from Ketchikan, who is our ex officio member of the board. And as you can tell by our board members, we are more diverse than just Juneau members. We also have members all over the community, all over Southeast, which is reflective of our reach in Southeast Alaska. The mission of Catholic Community Service is to strengthen families and individuals in Southeast Alaska with dignity, care, and compassion. We achieve this through our 3 divisions, which include the SAFE Child Advocacy Center, which is a member of a multidisciplinary team who responds to allegations of child abuse, and they advocate for the prevention, well-being, and healing of abused children. We also have Hospice and Home Care of Juneau, which provides hospice and home health services to individuals in Juneau. The name kind of explains itself, which is helpful. Finally, we have Southeast Senior Services, which provides home and community-based services such as Meals on Wheels, transportation, adult day services, care coordination, senior and caregiver counseling, and regional senior information center. On top of the 10 different senior centers that we have across Southeast Alaska. Our senior centers are located in Juneau, Wrangell, Sitka, Cake, Craig Kloak, Haines, Skagway, Angoon, Ketchikan, and also Hoonah. So we do a lot of things at Catholic Community Service. We have 27 different programs across our 3 divisions. And I think that we have struggled at storytelling. So that is what the intention of Year of Compassion is. It is an initiative to highlight and communicate the work CCS is doing within the year. We want to reach more individuals than ever before. So often people recognize Meals on Wheels, Hospice, our senior centers, but do not know what CCS is, the parent organization. We want everyone to know we are here to help with dignity, care, and compassion. So with that, I would like to welcome Ricky Dubois, the Prevention Education Specialist of the SAFE Child Advocacy Center. And before she joins, I do want to launch a poll. That is, did you know about the SAFE Child Advocacy Center before today? Ricky comes to us to the SAFE Child Advocacy Center after nearly 15 years with the Child Protective Services at the state. Ricky is motivated to collaborate with others who are committed to shining a light on child abuse that exists in our community. And of that poll, 12 out of 17 said yes, they did know the SAFE Child Advocacy Center, but 5 out of 17 did not. So I think that it is a success by those of you who did not know about the SAFE Child Advocacy Center that you're here tonight to learn more. So with that, I'd like to introduce Ricky to the stage, or the virtual stage.
Thank you for the introduction to the virtual stage, and thank you all for coming tonight. I'm here to talk to you about the SAFE Child Advocacy Center, and I actually am appreciative of those who have not heard of the SAFE CAC. because it's one of the things that we're really focusing on right now is making sure that we get the word out there about who we are and what we do and the important services that we provide to the community. So I'm excited to be here and talk about that. First off, what is the CAC and what do we do? The Child Advocacy Center is one of, I don't know exactly how many there are in Alaska, but it's one of several in Alaska. We're one of the few accredited members, which means we have met 10 standards of expectation for consistent evidence-based services provided to families and children who have experienced abuse. So we, at the CAC, we conduct forensic interviews with children who have been alleged to have been harmed. In that process, the CAC staff have forensic interviewers and they have victim advocates who are present and available to support families as they go through the process. A forensic interview is a recorded interview that a child participates in. We have trained staff who are able to engage in a neutral, fact-finding, open-ended interview with children to elicit the child's narrative. That interview is recorded as evidence. And the purpose of this process is to ensure that children are not re-traumatized through the process about talking about what's happened to them, that they have to talk to the least number of people. It's not saying that this is the only time they'll have to talk to anyone, but the goal is to reduce the number of times that a child has to repeatedly tell the story of what's happened to them. So this interview is recorded. It's observed by law enforcement staff, child protective services staff, and CAC staff. Sometimes we have victim advocates there, like from the Aware Shelter here in Juneau. And then sometimes we also have tribal representatives present for those interviews to support families. So that's a little bit about what the forensic interview process is like. Kids are given an opportunity. We have a child-focused, child-friendly facility. When you walk into our doors, it's like walking into a living room. There's a nice comfy couch and there's rugs and games, and we've even got a video game console to keep the kids, entertained while they're waiting for their opportunities to be interviewed. So they come into a very neutral, inviting, welcoming, calm location. They're given some time to get acclimated, and then they go back into the interview room where they are participate in those interviews. Depending on what comes of those interviews, sometimes we would schedule what's called a forensic medical exam, which is oftentimes more like a well child exam, checking height and weight and kind of a head to toe check of the body. They're also looking for the possibility of injury. Sometimes there may be evidence. Unfortunately, sometimes children need to go through testing for like sexually transmitted illnesses and whatnot if they might have been exposed to. But the goal is to gather information. And oftentimes the best part of that medical is for children to learn that their bodies are healthy and normal, and that whatever's happened to them, they will be okay and they're okay moving forward. The medical is often very reassuring. We have a medical room at our facility where we conduct those exams. We work with local Bartlett Regional Hospital. When a child comes in and needs an examination, they work with us to get that set up. So we have a multidisciplinary team of individuals. So we work together at the CAC with law enforcement, with child protective services staff, prosecution, medical staff, mental health. And then we also work with tribal representatives, educational personnel from the Juneau School District, and victim services advocates. We meet every 2 weeks as a multidisciplinary team to staff and discuss these cases, what the needs are, how we can collaborate together. And again, the goal being so that kids talk to the least number of people possible in this process, and that we are focusing on meeting their needs to heal them and allow them to move forward in a successful way as they move on through life, which comes into victim advocacy. So one of the things we also offer is once families come through, they've completed interviews, the information gathering process is complete, we have victim advocates on hand to identify what the needs are of this family, what their strengths are, any referrals they might need, connecting them to mental health services, assisting them with applying for victim compensation if they've been injured, and court preparation and support in that process. So it's kind of a big overview of what we do there. One of the other pieces that we've always kind of focused on is prevention. And I've been in my position now for about 5 months. I was hired to focus on community and individual prevention. So meeting with communities at the community level to build prevention models for our communities in Southeast, and then working directly with families who have come through the CAC who have either experienced abuse or at high risk of abuse. And so I've got a couple of different programs, both individually focused with the family and the children, and then a bigger picture, more of like a parenting education through the strengthening families model, which is building protective factors for families. When we can increase protective factors for parents, we reduce risk factors, and we keep children safe and prevented from abuse. So that's kind of what we're launching off with right now. In the midst of this, Erin and I have been working on a bit of rebranding of our social media and getting the word out there, more information out there to the community about what is child abuse, what does it look like, what to look for, who to contact, and further efforts that parents and community members can engage in to be part of the effort to prevent child abuse, because it does take a community, and it takes all of us adults being aware of what's happening to children in our communities and being willing to step in and help whichever ways we can. And we look forward to increasing opportunities for the community to become involved.
Thank you so much, Ricky. I really appreciate you speaking with us tonight. And also to add on to that little bit at the end, make sure to go and follow the SAFE Child Advocacy Center on Facebook and Instagram. We're going to be doing a lot, especially next month, which is Child Abuse Prevention and Awareness Month. So make sure to be following that to keep along what we'll be doing in the community, as long as just great information to help get into the community about child abuse. So next up, we have Cameron Sanders, who is an occupational therapist for Hospice and Home Care of Juneau. Which fun facts about Hospice and Home Care of Juneau: one, we never send our patients a bill. If it's not covered by insurance, it's covered by us. And two, we are the only hospice option in Juneau. And so with that, I'm going to launch another poll in regards to hospice and home care, just to kind of see how much you guys know. Did you know that hospice and home care never sends a bill to their patients? And I'll be delighted if everyone says yes, but it's also great if people are learning more tonight. So as I said, next up we have Cameron Sanders. Cameron has been an occupational therapist for 4 years. And fun fact about Cameron is that he came to hospice and home care as a traveler, and then has chosen to stay in Juneau at hospice and home care year over year. And he regularly attributes that to the positive work environment that hospice and home care has, which makes me really happy to know that hospice and home care has a great staff that backs up their employees. So back to that poll. So 14 out of 19 said yes, but 5 out of 19 said no, that they did not know that hospice and home care never sends a bill to their patients. So happy to be getting that information out there. So with that, I'm going to welcome Cameron to the virtual stage.
Hey guys, nice to meet y'all. So as Erin was saying, my name is Cameron. I'm the occupational therapist, our only one currently. And to my knowledge, what Erin was speaking on with us being the only hospice in Juneau, to my knowledge, we're the only OT home health. I know there's a private PT in Juneau that does just physical therapy, but I'm the only home health OT in Juneau as well. And so just to touch on also what she mentioned with my travel. So I started travel right after graduating from the University of Tennessee. And I came here, I think 3 times as a traveler, the last one being for a year contract right when COVID started, because COVID was only going to last a year, right? And so I came up here to fill that void. And even before that, I'd already fallen in love with Juneau, and that's why I continued to come back. As a traveler, I didn't have as much involvement with the overall organization of CCS. It was more just with hospice and home care, and that's definitely evolved as I've become a full-time employee. But like Erin was saying, my appreciation and joy for the staff of hospice and home health played a massive role. Travel is awesome, and I really enjoy doing that. But I don't think that I'd worked anywhere in the 7 states that I'd worked since I graduated that I had the bond and connection with the staff. Which is also impressive because, as most of you probably know, we do rotate through a lot of travelers. And for the most part, we do really well with recruiting good nurses and therapists here. So that's been a joy just personally for me. My role with HHCJ is basically going out. Once we get a referral from a patient, I will do an evaluation first and foremost, my number one thing is always safety. And so making sure that a patient can transition from the hospital or from a long-term care facility, or whatever it may be, basically getting them back into the mold. And some of our patients, they've never left their home, right? They just get a referral for us to come out and kind of make things easier, whether that be for the caregiver or the patient. I feel like that's lost a lot in therapy as a whole, from hospitals to rehab facilities, is the benefit that we provide for the caregivers, not just the patient, because that's a big, probably 40% of my job in the home, is not only making sure those patients are good, but that those that take care of them are as well. And I'd say the second reason that brought me back to Juneau, don't get me wrong, we all know there's plenty more that we could have in Juneau. But the community itself is amazing. And like the volunteer work that some of you do for CCS, I mean, I don't see stuff like that anywhere else when I was doing my travel work. And then just the way that the community itself in turn kind of repays that debt, right? The amount of donations that we get for equipment and stuff like that. I mean, it's just for as a small of a community as this is, it's really impressive. And so for what we do for the community, I could not tell you. So I'm very active in intramurals throughout Juneau with volleyball and baseball and stuff. And I couldn't tell you how often I get stopped, whether they recognize me as an employee or not. I always wear my CCS mask. So that's kind of like a starter point. And just how often people bring up stuff that we worked with their mom or worked with their aunt, and the difference we made. And not to toot our own horn, but I honestly, in the 3.5 years on and off that I've been here, and now about almost 2 straight years, our compliments are always compliments. They're never negative for what we do with our patients. And I feel like you can really see that impact. You meet 1, 2, 3 people that we work with, and we really make a difference. Another big role that I play in, not as much as some of our volunteers, but is distributing adaptive equipment. I help Jen and Heather at the office do that a lot when we don't have volunteers. And that loan closet is amazing. That's another thing that I couldn't tell you anywhere I've worked that we've really had that. And not that we, really push that out as much. It is for our patients, especially hospice. But the amount of work we're able to do in the community for that is really impressive. And I think has a long lasting effect when people are doing better to kind of repay that debt to us and give the equipment back and so forth. And then just personally for me, like I said, I couldn't tell you how many trails I've learned about and hikes I've done through my patients. It is a joy for me personally. I love working with seniors and adults, and especially people that have been in Juneau for a long time or in Southeast, and just kind of getting a feel for, what Southeast Alaska was like 30 years ago and 40 years ago. And that's not really something that I feel like probably would be necessarily potent in my life without this job, and without the experiences that I get from meeting a lot of my patients. So as a whole, like I said, I'm not just saying this, I truly mean it. I think me moving from Tennessee to up here maybe proves it a little bit, but the community as a whole really had a big impact on me and myself and what I want to do in return with the services that I provide for these patients. And I think as a whole, our team is excellent and we do a very good job of doing that.
Thanks, Cameron. Really appreciate all the work that you're doing. And I know that you make a difference in all of your patients' lives. So thank you for that. So next up, we have Eileen Hosey, who is a case manager at Southeast Senior Services. And for those of you who don't know, Southeast Senior Services some of its most popular programs are Meals on Wheels, and also our 10 different senior centers that we have. So I have another poll to engage you, and after we have that poll, I'll reveal the answer. But how many meals do you think Southeast Senior Services served in 2021? So this is across all of Southeast. I'll let you guys finish that poll as I continue to talk about our wonderful Eileen. Eileen has been with Southeast Senior Services since 2009, so it's her 13th year. And she likes to say that she meets people where they're at. I would describe Eileen as welcoming, generous, and loving. I cannot think of a more perfect person for her work at Southeast Senior Services. So before she comes on and speaks, I'm going to reveal the answer. So about 53% of you thought it was 110,000. 11% thought it was 89, and 37% thought it was 131. Well, I am pleased to say that we served 131,299 meals in 2021. And once again, that's across all of Southeast. So with that, I'm going to let Eileen take the stage so she can talk about her work at Southeast Senior Services.
Well, thank you very much, Erin. It's so great to be here. Good evening to all the board members and all the other great workers at CCS. As a case manager, my job is not to manage people's lives, but it's to help them manage their own lives. And when I say that I like to meet people where they are, when we get a referral and go into a home, we like to go in without preconceived expectations, because as most of you know, Alaskans, especially us seniors, are a pretty independent group of people. And we like to be respected and honored for who we are. So one of my main jobs is to get a sense from the client and the family, what kinds of issues are they facing? A lot of it is independence is becoming compromised. They're not able to get around as well. The last 2 years, people have been so isolated. And so we sit down and have a lengthy, leisurely conversation. And that is probably one of the high points of my job, because I've lived here for many years, but I see people all the time who born and raised in Juneau, and the stories they tell are magnificent. How people managed in the early days when they had nothing here is pretty extraordinary. We like to talk about what I would term realistic independence, so that people would be more accepting of some of the services, the in-home services or the community services that are offered. I like to tell people about how they can determine what they want to do in their life. So we talk about the usual things, you know, meals and rides, which are crucial. The bridge program. So we have grants available for people for some in-home services. We talk about some of the practical things like having a power of attorney and advanced healthcare directives, and how important and wise it is to have those documents in place. And oftentimes when we go into a home and the family members are there and the client, and there's a sense of chaos because everybody is stressed. So what we try to do is reduce the stress and let the family begin to see a manageable type of situation and the options that are available. In the final analysis, people get to choose what they want to do with their life. Seniors have that opportunity also. So I'd like to share one story about my most, it was such an important and wonderful thing. I had a patient named Jenny, a client named Jenny, who lived in independent housing, but her independence truly was compromised. She couldn't get out anymore. She had fallen a few times. She refused to consider assisted living. So we went along and we talked every month, and we were able to get her a grant to have someone come and help her once or twice a week. When that became not enough, we reintroduced the idea of residential supported living. And gradually she thought, well, it might be a good idea. So I brought over the forms and we looked at the forms, and she finally agreed to complete the forms, but she wouldn't make any commitment further than that. And her health continued to deteriorate. And, you know, every week it was like, is she gonna make a decision? And she did. And the happiest day in my life was on December 5th, when she got on the airplane with her son and went to assisted living. and she's very happy. She's very safe, and she's wondering, why she didn't do it much sooner. So we get referrals from a variety of places. Family members refer, people self-refer, and the hospital refers people who are leaving the hospital, need a few more community supports. And some of the biggest sources of help is just to talk with the seniors and let them know that they count, that what they say matters, and that they have a choice in how they want to live their lives. And that's truly the greatest pleasure that we have as case managers.
Eileen, we do have a little bit more time. Could you share another story by chance?
Oh, I've got lots of stories. Yes. Rob was his name, and Rob was 90, and Rob was living at home by himself, and he said, I am not moving. Well, Rob fell and fell and fell, and finally said, well, maybe he would go live with a relative. So he did, but he wasn't going to do anything else. No, he was not going to go to the bridge. He didn't want meals. He wanted his pickup truck, but it was unsafe for him to drive. But after a few weeks of just conversation and allowing him to think things through and get his medication straightened out, have a conversation with his physician whom he really trusted, he decided maybe he would have the meals. He signed up for Capital Access. He's still thinking about meals. And he is also, he allowed us to put his name on the active list for the Pioneers Home. And so his life has improved immensely. The stress in the family has considerably improved, and he's waiting to get the call to go into the Pioneers Home. Let me think of some others. Not everybody's situation is so rosy. We had a call from a couple of people that there was a fellow living by himself, and that he'd sort of secluded himself, and they were concerned about him. And I went over there. Surprisingly, he let me in, and we had a half-hour visit. And he just told me, he was living the way he wanted. He was not in danger of harming himself. He was living the way he wanted, but not the way perhaps the neighbors wanted. So my main job was to reassure the neighbors that all was well. His name was Dan W., and Dan was doing well. He just had a different lifestyle, and I talked to the neighbors regularly. Yep, nothing's changed. So they are aware, if something does change, they can call us. Dan knows he can call if he has questions, if he has problems. And so that's a situation where more information for everybody is really helpful.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Eileen. As you all can see, she is quite the storyteller, and she always inspires me. I really appreciate her on the team. And I know if I ever need someone to help with outreach, Eileen is one of those people that I can go to. So I really appreciate having her on the team. So
thanks, Erin.
You're welcome. The work that Catholic Community Service does would not be possible without our volunteers. And I just want to take a moment to say thank you to all the volunteers that we have joined us tonight. Your work truly makes what we do possible. We have 3 different volunteer programs at Catholic Community Service. We have hospice and home care. We have hospice. We have Friends of Seniors, which started in April 2020. We were getting it started, but then we really pulled the trigger on that program because of COVID. And then finally, we of course have Meals on Wheels, which is one of our bigger programs. Our next speaker is Carl Schrader. Last fall, Carl was honored with a statewide award as Volunteer of the Year. Carl has volunteered for 8 years at hospice and then also with Friends of Seniors when that program started in April of 2020. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Carl to the stage. Carl, it's really easy in our culture in America to steer away from death, but it's something that Carl has leaned into. And I think it's something that I invite more people to lean into, because essentially what Carl does as a volunteer is he holds our hospice patients' hand in their last moments of life. And that is so beautiful that Carl has that bravery to do that. And so once again, I'm going to invite Carl to the virtual stage to talk about his experience as a volunteer.
Well, thanks for that introduction, Erin. And I've really kind of enjoyed hearing a little bit about some of the other programs at Catholic Community Services that I'm not really haven't been that much involved with or even aware of. But anyway, I'm sort of asking myself, why do I volunteer? And it may sound a little bit corny, but it's because I really do believe in community. People, one thing I love about Juneau, it has a real sense of community. We live in groups, we live in communities, because we can help each other. I get really, really put out with this, that so much of the current politics and whatnot is me first, and America first, me first, and whatnot, and I really feel that that's not what we're about as human beings. And I will say that as a volunteer, that it's incredibly important to really volunteer, put your volunteer efforts into something that you really believe in, and that you believe that your work is going to make a difference. And I've really found that the hospice and home care program at Catholic Community Services it really rings a bell with me. And what really drew me to this, working with hospice, I think, Erin kind of touched on it as a bit, as, in our current culture, we tend to really turn a blind eye to old age, sickness, and death, to old folks. Everybody loves, holding babies and kids and whatnot. But, as I'm finding now, I'm in my mid 70s, that, older people, tend to be kind of invisible. And it's, so wonderful that we've got some programs that we can really pay a little bit more attention to that. I really support, encouraging people to think about the end of life issues, their advanced directives, how they want to, complete their life. And to sort of introduce it a little bit more, we read in the obituaries, frequently how, so-and-so, passed at home, surrounded by, loving family and friends. And, well, that's really kind of the ideal. That's really not always the case at all. Everybody isn't in that situation. And what we really try and do at hospice and home care is make that possible, and I hope that I can contribute to making that happen more often, where people can have a peaceful and fulfilling, end of life at home, rather than in the fairly sterile environment of a hospital. I really, a lot of what I do is trying to really make the job of a lot of the professional staff at hospice and home care a little easier. And also, as Cameron, mentioned, we really focus a lot on the caregiver, because so often especially at end of life, usually a spouse or a loved one, family member ends up being the primary caregiver, and they're often really not really trained in that. They're really not prepared for that. And anything that we can do to support them to make their job easier, the better. So we spend as much time, I think, really supporting the caregivers as we do if you want to call them patient. We always kind of grope for a term of the people that we're really helping through this difficult period. But like the caregivers, often it's a very, very demanding job. They're not often trained for it. Often it's a 24-hour a day job they often don't get enough sleep. So some of the things that I'll do is give the caregiver a little bit of a break, maybe have the opportunity to sit with the patient and get to know them and just really be there, keep them company. Their social life gets often very, very, very small, when we're at home in the final stages. And I do things, whatever, often very, very simple things, changing light bulbs, taking out the trash, maybe take the dog for a walk. I probably have been spending more of my time lately in just delivering hospital beds, setting them up, bringing in shower benches, bedside commodes, those kind of little things that can really make a big difference in helping them to become comfortable, make the caregiver's job a lot easier, and anything I can do to really, I'll tell you, I've been incredibly impressed with the nursing staff as well. I mean, talk about some, when I am as a volunteer, kind of looking for how can I be helpful in this situation, kind of as an outsider, I often look at the nursing staff, and they're such models of compassion and understanding and patience. At a time when people often tend to be kind of crabby and not always at their best. But I'll kind of end with, I think what's really important, if you are thinking about being a volunteer, it's so important to really believe in what you're doing and believe that what you are doing personally really does make a difference. And the other thing I've really kind of found is, as a seasoned volunteer, is don't be afraid to say no, because sometimes you're asked to do things. Maybe it's often not a comfortable situation when you're going into a household where you're really not part of the group, but they're it's often an uncomfortable situation, and I've really learned to not be shy about saying no. If maybe there are other things going on in my life, I just really don't have the time right now, and I'm too stressed, because I watch my little resentometer, and if I feel like I'm being really too pressed and that I can't be a real cheerful, helpful person, I'm not shy about saying no. I really can't do it today, but call me again later. So thanks a lot for the opportunity to talk about the program.
Thank you so much, Carl, for sharing your words and what motivates you as a volunteer. But I also think it's a really important message to say that you have boundaries too, and knowing when to say no to volunteering, because especially in such a delicate position as hospice and home care, I feel like I would have the pressure of saying, well, I can't say no. But it's really beautiful that you feel like you can say no as a volunteer, and that makes me happy to hear as like an outreach coordinator. So Senator Keel says he loves the idea that you're keeping an eye on your resentometer. So that's thank you, Carl, once again. At this time, I have the really great honor of introducing Erin Walker-Tolles, who is our Executive Director at Catholic Community Service. She's been with Catholic Community Service for since 2015, so that's going on her 7th year now. She started out at our organization kind of during a dark period for us, and she comes from 20 plus years at the state. Working with Erin has been one of the most positive and uplifting experiences of my life. I do have to say, I am new to Catholic Community Service. I've been here a little bit over a year, but she has an ability of looking at a difficult situation, and where most people might pull the trigger and feel the pressure and having to decide and maybe only listening to themselves, Erin has the ability to take a pause, evaluate, and then ask her employees what their opinions are. She regularly makes the statement that this is a bottom-up organization, and I can honestly say as an employee that it is so refreshing in today's workforces to be a part of an organization like that. So at this time, I'm going to introduce Erin Walker-Tolles, and she's going to share a little bit about the history of Catholic Community Service and from her experience, and then also kind of where we are going as an organization. So with that, I welcome Erin to the virtual stage.
Thank you so much. What kind words. I'm glad you feel that way. That's my intention, that we're a team, and I'm the support staff. My job is to make sure that our employees and volunteers have what they need to do the best job possible for those we serve. Ultimately, I'm the support staff at the bottom of the pyramid, and I'm glad that that actually is your experience, because that's what I'm shooting for. And certainly we have so many brilliant, dedicated staff and volunteers. I would be a fool not to listen to the wisdom of the people who are just as dedicated to this mission as I am. I'm going to talk a little bit just about my own experience since I joined CCS just almost 7 years ago now. As Erin mentioned, it was tough going, and thanks to the board of directors for being totally transparent with me when they talked about, we need an executive director, and by the way, things are kind of bumpy right now. We have. When I look at how we manage an organization like this and make sure that we fulfill our mission and provide good services, so much of it has to do with our mission and our values and why we're all here. Our mission is strengthening individuals and families in Southeast Alaska with dignity, care, and compassion. And that means that that's how we treat one another. That's how we treat our clients and patients, how we treat our volunteers, how we treat everyone. If you're on the clock, I expect dignity, care, and compassion for everyone that you meet when you're wearing your CCS mask. I know, Cameron, you're wearing that mask off duty, and thank you. You're still living the dream. So when I joined the agency, we had not had consistent ED for about 4 years. We'd gone through a number of temporary executive directors. We were at a low point financially. We were losing money every year. We had compliance issues, not following all the regs, not dotting all those T's, dotting the I's and crossing the T's. I think maybe we had them reversed. We were crossing the I's and dotting the T's in some cases. And morale was low. Morale was low because for good reason. That was a reasonable response to this tough situation, not knowing if you were going to have a job or if one of some programs that had to be closed. And so when I joined the agency, I tried my best to listen to the staff, listen to what was going on. And again, like Erin said, take that moment, that pause, and evaluate, not do anything knee jerk. And we did look at, we had some programs that were losing $80,000 a month. We had some problems collecting the money for hospice and home health services that we were legitimately providing, but our paperwork was not quite as on point as we needed it to be. And ultimately, though, by engaging everyone at the agency, we were able to turn it around. Within 4 years, we were in the black again. We weren't hemorrhaging money. Are we rolling in dough? Absolutely not. We're a nonprofit. We're always going to be pinching every penny and scraping the bottom of the barrel to make the most of our resources. But it has been a really exciting and satisfying journey to get ourselves managed so that we're not losing money, so that we can so that we were able to address our compliance issues and not worry so much about audits and what did we have to fix. And it's still a work in progress. We have a long way to go, and the challenges are significant when you're running a nonprofit. Every year there's more rules and regulations. For many years, our state of Alaska budget has been in distress, and no increases in funding or minimal increases in funding for most programs, for senior grants, for our Office of Children's Services grants, for the CAC, and for hospice and home care at Juneau. Just the complexity continues to grow every year, and seems like the feds can't sit still for more than 30 seconds before they change something again, and we have to learn how to redo it, that paperwork again. But that said, I have to say that I'm so grateful that I had been with CCS for 5 years before the pandemic hit. And, it was, I mean, we were all there. It was scary. It was scary because we didn't know what was going to happen next. And, all of a sudden we were being told that seniors needed to stay home and isolate because, they could die. Any one of us could get COVID. We were all of a sudden trying to figure out procedures for masks. If someone was coughing and didn't have a mask, could they get on the Capitol Access or the paratransit or senior ride van? We had to make decisions and sort of pivot on a dime. And the biggest question we really had in those moments was, well, should we hunker? Should we kind of shut things down? We knew that we couldn't hold our congregate meals programs anymore in any of our 10 senior centers because that certainly was not safe for seniors. How would people feel about, how would our staff feel about assisting people in a wheelchair onto the van? You can't stay 6 feet away when you do that. What was the right thing to do by our employees? We really wrestled with this. We had a lot of discussions, and really it came back to our mission, and it came back to that dignity, care, and compassion, and our mission, which is to serve people in need. And what we saw was that the need had increased. Our biggest group of people we serve are seniors. And they were being told that they now had to stay home, and already many seniors are isolated, but then to be told to isolate further. We know that nutrition is one of the most critical factors to keeping seniors healthy, avoid falls, avoid hospitalization and institutionalization. So we leaned into it. We decided that we were going to try to meet community need. And when it came to our employees, we made the decision and approached our staff and gave them a choice and said, listen, if you don't feel safe, many of our staff are older staff who have underlying health conditions, and we did not want to pressure them to do something that they felt was unsafe. But we also wanted to give them the opportunity to continue to serve. Because honestly, the vast majority of people at Catholic Community Service didn't even hesitate. They just said, well, how can we help? How do we do this? What do we do now? Hospice and home health have been going into people's homes, people who have COVID, and serving them. And we have not had a case of transmission during this time either in hospice and home health. So kudos to the precautions and the attention to safety that we've seen. We have leaned into to the point where, honestly, our Meals on Wheels program, the number of meals we're serving went from 83,000 meals a year to 131,000 meals a year. And it's continuing to grow. The community knows we're here, and we are here to serve regardless of the conditions that we're doing that under. Our case management services have more than doubled. Our caregiver support services, as people are at home caring for their loved ones with dementia, the demand, the need for support has just exploded. And even the Child Advocacy Center, one of our greatest concerns was children isolated at home, not going to school, and no one knowing that they were being abused. No safe adult in their life to see them and recognize the signs of abuse. And so we started a public education effort to try to get the community at large to check on the kids they know in their community, check on your kid and your neighbor kids, make sure your kids' friends are doing okay. And if you run into a kid somewhere, see what are the signs, know what the signs are, and know what to do to try to get that kid help. And what we saw is we did see a dip in the number of referrals coming to us, but as soon as schools opened up, we're back right where we were. And we're not stopping any of those efforts. We are growing our community efforts. We continue to grow our services. We started Friends of Seniors and really tried to kick it off to meet those needs. We opened up Meals on Wheels to any senior, regardless of household situation. And I should mention that most of these services are free. We just provide them. We've received a lot of relief funds, which is amazing. And I'm so tremendously grateful. But it's made the additional complexity and work that comes with that admin is also a huge challenge for us to manage. And then the City and Borough of Juneau came to us to ask if we could help distribute funds to working people who had been affected by COVID and the loss of employment. And last year we distributed $5 million to residents of Juneau to help them with their living expenses and their rent and utilities. We have grown. We've grown by about 40% in terms of the number of services we're offering, and we continue to grow. And I've been so impressed with the dedication of our staff and volunteers who continue to do this amazing work. Challenges as we move forward, we don't know what the future will hold. You know, for many years, we knew pretty much how much money we were going to get and pretty much how many people we'd serve. And, it was, pretty solid, pretty stable. We could plan for the future. All bets are off now. But we are approaching it with an attitude that this is an opportunity to achieve our mission. And trying to engage the community. We've had such great partners and so many people have risen to the challenge. So yeah, we don't know how the funding will look next year or the year after, because we don't know what the plan is for relief funds. And even once the relief funds start to kind of peter out, we have grown so much that the old amount of grants ain't gonna cut it no more. But we will keep working and advocating and communicating, and we have a lot of great support out there. And I think the other thing is, I think the workforce issue is the other big challenge we face. As Cameron was talking about, all of our nurses are travelers. We are not alone as a healthcare provider using primarily travelers in Alaska. There's a shortage of healthcare workers and a shortage of workers to provide direct services to seniors, like personal care attendant and CNA, things that we don't necessarily provide through Catholic Community Service, but those are services that we refer to. Those are services that we help pay for and give grants to our clients and caregivers so they can access those services. And even when we have the money, there might not be a worker available to provide that service. And so we're doing a lot of advocacy with the Southeast Alaska Elder Care Coalition through AgeNet, which Marianne is the president of. There are a lot of coalitions, a lot of advocacy, and a lot of great supporters in our legislature, some of them here on this call tonight, and we deeply appreciate your support. And just thanks to everyone who's here tonight. Thank you for listening and being so supportive. This has been an amazing time to be part of Catholic Community Service. And I really feel that we have risen to the occasion and been ultimately true to our mission all the way around. And I'm always impressed by the great work that the people at our agency do.
Thank you so much, Erin. As I said earlier, it is such a pleasure working with you, and it's so refreshing to work at